The third period of New Thought that's really going to put the final blow in the power of the church in Europe is the Enlightenment. Now, the Enlightenment is all about the natural laws of the universe. And by the time we get to this period, there's been all kinds of scientific advancements. The church has been proven wrong on a couple things, and there's been a lot of exploration. There are also concepts like slavery, which many of the enlightened thinkers opposed. The Enlightenment is really going to pick up and take off in the late 1600s into the 1700s. And sometimes the 18th century is called the Enlightened Century. It is during that period of time we get two of the most important revolutions in the history of the world, the American Revolution and the French Revolution. A lot of these enlightened thinkers, they oppose slavery. They believe in at least limited freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and other things. And one of the things that is really going to hurt the church during the Enlightenment period is a lot of the travel literature starts to be analyzed. And what they see is with travel literature, it's like everyone that traveled kept a journal or a diary. And every people that they came across had some form of religion. They had some form of God. And this really started to lead people to believe, well, how do we know that so-and-so is right and everybody else is wrong? How do we know that there's only one way to heaven, so to speak? And so you start getting what some people call mutated, or what I like to call buffet-style religions, where you go through and you pick out the things that you like and you don't pick out the things that you don't like. And it really does damage to the church. Now, in the Enlightenment, there's some people you need to be familiar with. You need to be familiar with John Locke, his idea of social contract, which also Rousseau wrote about the social contract. You need to be familiar with Montesquieu. How do these individuals impact government? How do they impact the creation of government? How do some of them oppose or create problems for the Christian church? For example, Voltaire, who is the father of the Enlightenment, does both. He writes about the kind of government that he would like, but he also greatly criticizes the Christian church. It's very important as you go through and you look at this that you see two things. One, establishments for ideas for new government. And secondly, how in some cases some of these ideas oppose the power that was in the church. And it's really from this idea of being the anti-Christian point of view, or anti-Christian might not be the right word, but they're definitely anti the power of the Christian church. And it's from this where really deism becomes very important. The idea that, okay, so what if there is a creator, somebody created something? He has no impact on the natural laws of the universe. So it's like almost as if, let's say that God created everything, and then after that he just sits back and lets everything happen the way he wants it to happen without any real interferences. It's also from the Enlightenment that we get the social sciences, which are the sciences of man, the sciences of people, which include history, geography, economics, political science. Psychology is even in this category, even though it's also a behavioral science. Sociology, anthropology. All these subjects are primarily focused on people, the history of people, how do people govern themselves, the history of people's economic systems. And David Hume plays a very important role in this because of the reflection on human behavior. Now, another one of these thinkers you need to make sure that you're familiar with and you will run across in your textbook is Adam Smith, who is the father of modern day economics. As we go through these slides, just realize that there is information in your book. We're just trying to go through and make a real quick recording of some high spots. That way we have more class time to do other stuff. You can see that women play a very important role in the Enlightenment, especially upper class women, the wealthy, because they're going to be the ones that are going to have their salons open to these enlightened thinkers, and they're going to invite their friends and other people in to come and hear them speak. Probably the most important work of literature that comes out of the Enlightenment period is The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire by Edward Gibbon. Many books have been written, many theories have been written about why Rome fell. And Edward Gibbon writes that the reason why Rome fell was solely because of Christianity. Christianity is the only reason why Rome fell. And this is significant because this is the first time anybody's ever said anything like this. And really it comes down to that if he would have tried to say this centuries earlier, he would have been killed. And this is used as a significant point to show just how much power has been taken from the church. Now, the next topic we need to look at is exploration. How do we get to where we are now? And really, the exploration period starts on a very high scale, right around the year 1350, maybe 1400. And it starts the imperial period, or imperialism, or colonization, or mercantilism. They all refer to the same thing, where you get more wealth by obtaining more territory. Now, before this, Europe's only real connection with the outside world was through the Crusades. By the time you get to the exploration period, they do not believe that the world is flat anymore. They do believe that there are wealthy and mysterious cities. For example, I watch a TV show on the History Channel called The Curse of Oak Island that is very much based in a lot of these theories about the old wealthy and mysterious cities. And it really boils down to that once the science was ready, the axle rudder, once they had a very crude form of a map, and once they started discovering wind patterns, they were off to the races. And really, the exploration, why people explore, is really going to come down to gold, glory, and God. A lot of people want to be rich, a lot of people want to be famous, and some people want to save the world. Now, Marco Polo had, with his journal travels, had really got a lot of expectation, a lot of ideas out there about what was in the Far East. Thus, the first explorers are all trying to get to Africa. Now, we could go through the list of who got here, who got where, whatever. It really doesn't matter. What matters is, once Da Gama reached India and came all the way back around Africa and back to Europe, he brought with him treasures. These treasures were not of gold, but they were of silk and spices. More people want to go. It's just like this. If you've only eaten mashed potatoes all of your life, bland, nothing added, and then all of a sudden somebody hands you some butter, some salt, some pepper, maybe sour cream, or some people like cheese in their mashed potatoes. Once you get that new taste, once you get that new flavor, you're not going to want to go back to the bland potatoes. You also will want to look for a cheaper way, because going all the way around from Europe, around Africa to India and back, it costs a lot of money and it takes a lot of time. The idea for a cheaper, faster way leads eyes to going west. Now, we know that the Vikings explored, they got to Greenland, we got to Iceland, and whatever, but from our point of view, we are looking at what led to the permanent settlement. Christopher Columbus goes west. Christopher Columbus never discovers America, but Christopher Columbus's greatest contribution to the world is he went west, he found land, he found part of the Bahamas, he found part of Hispaniola, he found Cuba. He found land, and he came back to Europe alive to tell about it. And once that happened, the floodgates opened, and more people started coming. More people started exploring the world. Of course, the Americas will be named after Amerigo Vespucci. Again, let me point out, there's a lot of information in your book. We're not going to cover everything in this recording. It's easy for you to go back and to look at and to read. But just realize that once Columbus went and came back, it changed everything. And everybody else really takes up. Originally, it was primarily the Portuguese and the Spanish. Later, the British and the French will join in the search for and the colonization of the New World. The Spanish conquistadors will be the ones that will lead the charge. They'll be the ones that will conquer the Aztecs. They'll be the ones that conquer the Incas. Again, you can go through and you can read this and you can look at this. Sometimes their conquest was by sword. Sometimes it was through alliances with other indigenous peoples against, like the Aztecs, who were holding people hostage and making them pay tribute. However, one of the other big ways of conquest was through disease. Once all this happened, the Catholic Church came in and helped to establish a European influence in terms of culture, even though in Latin America, South America, Central America, we get what's known as the Latin culture, which is very different than the culture in the United States, which was primarily based on British, French, and Germans. But churches will be built, cities will be built, hospitals, schools, all this information will be used. Now, probably the worst aspect of all of exploration was the slave trade. The slave trade was primarily done by the Dutch and the Portuguese. It's important to note as we go through here that African princes primarily captured individuals that would be sold in the slave trade. The history of Africa is a very interesting one. It's one where, much like Afghanistan and other places in the Pacific, your birth dictates just about everything. And individuals were more loyal to their local tribes than they were anything else. And this created civil war, which in some cases allowed for the destruction of societies. For example, we flip over to this side here on Africa. This comes directly from, this slide comes directly from an African textbook. And of course, so does this next slide, not necessarily word for word. But it all boils down to that they fought each other and sold each other into slavery, and then it came to the New World. The majority of the slaves that came to the New World actually went to the Caribbean. There were approximately 8 million slaves that were brought to the New World. And by the way, those numbers might be different than what you might see in your book or if you're doing your research. About 5 million actually went to the Caribbean. About 2.5 million went to Brazil and other South American countries. And about 500,000 came to the modern day United States and Canada. It's very unfortunate that this happened. Please understand that slavery still exists in the world today. There, of course, is the sex slave issue. There's also the indentured servitude, which is still highly common in the Caribbean, where individuals are not free. It's really just slavery by a different name. And it's very unfortunate that this happens, but it is a part of history. Other places that people explored, of course, Asia with China. You can see right here, this comes directly from an overview on China in terms of exploration, and then same here with Japan and also with India. The nation states really began in the 1600s. The 30 Years' War is the event that really triggers everything. It is going to be the 30 Years' War, which includes the 4 phases of the Bohemian, the Danish, the Swedish, and the Franco-Swedish. It's really this war that starts over the Protestants versus the Catholics in the Holy Roman Empire, or modern-day Germany. But it's actually going to lead us to the beginning of the modern world. It's going to bring us the beginning of the modern military. It's going to bring us to the beginning of the modern age. One of the key parts of this particular war, we're not going to go into a lot of specifics, but if you see in the Swedish phase, King Adolphus, King of Sweden, he created the first modern army. This is an army that fought in rows and columns. This is the type of warfare that we typically think of when we think of the American Civil War. The idea that they were all together, for example, coming forward on the military revolution slide. It's a standing army. It's flexible. It is a mobile infantry where they're lined up in rows and columns and everybody fires at once. And it's based on discipline. And the idea is to get a constant wave of fire against your enemy, which is not yet trained, which would do a lot of destruction, create panic in the enemy ranks, and would lead to victory. You can see all this right here on this particular slide that we're talking about. And this will be the principal way that European powers fight all the way up until World War I. World War I ends the Adolphus military revolution. But it's important to realize that this is extremely important, that it changes the way they fought. And everybody, the Russians, the British, the French, the Germans, everybody started copying this Adolphus military revolution. Excuse me. Now, backing back up, we have the Peace of Westphalia, 1648. 1648 is regarded as the beginning of the modern period. Why? Because the 30 Years' War ended all the wars of religion. Now, we're talking about the wars between the Christian church, Protestantism, and Catholicism. I know about Ireland and I know about a few other places where a violence occasionally erupts. But we're talking about this massive war that was all across Europe. It's over. Because now your religion, in terms of Christianity, is not the most important thing in the world. It's your nationality. We have the start of nationalism. We have the first attempt at international law. We have kings that now that the Pope is weakened, that are going to step up and they are going to rule and they are going to organize their kingdoms in a way that all loyalty goes to them first, to God second. You get the balance of power concept that we have to keep everybody about the same in terms of power and influence, or we all have to go to war to maintain the balance of power, which really is a very silly concept, but it's a concept that's going to dominate Europe for a couple hundred years. State building just takes off. Exploration, colonization, everything increases. And it's during this period of time that England becomes England. France becomes France. Prussia starts the road to becoming Germany. Russia becomes Russia. It's also the last treaty that's written in Latin. Latin was the language of the church. Now, things are going to be written in the language of trade, the language of the world, which means that the majority of treaties from this point on are going to be written in in English and French. The world has now changed. The church no longer dominates. We now have kingdoms. We now have nations. And thus, the beginning of the modern period.